Week 6 of the Joshlin Smith trial placed one man squarely at the center of the courtroom's attention, Jacquen Appollis. On day 28, he took the witness stand, the first of the three accused to testify, marking a pivotal moment in the trial within a trial. This week's proceedings were dominated by one question: can the alleged confession he gave on the 5th of March 2024 be trusted as voluntary, or was it the product of coercion, manipulation, or torture? To understand where we are now, we need to first explore the journey that brought Jacquen Appollis to this courtroom. Accused of involvement in the disappearance and alleged sale of 6-year-old Joshlin Smith, a child that is not his but whose mother he loved. This breakdown will unfold in 3 parts: the story of Jacquen, who he is, how he met Kelly, and how he became an accused, his plea versus the alleged confession and the testimony on the stand, and what else happened this week and what's to come, a look at other developments, and a preview of week 7. Before we dive in, I just wanted to send a personal thank you to new members of our channel. Thank you for subscribing. For us, a self-funded media publication, this means a lot. Also, I wanted to give out personal shout-outs to those who've commented on our Joshlin Smith trial weekly deep dives. Thank you for the comments. Not only does it create conversation around the subject of the video, but it also helps us reach new viewers. Okay, back to the breakdown. Before he was accused 1, before the world knew his name in connection to the disappearance of Joshlin Smith, Jacquen Appollis was, by all outward appearance, a quiet man with few known affiliations except one: Kelly Smith. They met several years ago. Testimony from various witnesses in the main trial painted a picture of a developing relationship between the two. According to Ms. Colleen Zegers, a key witness and longtime supporter of Kelly, Jacquen's involvement with Kelly began when she was still trying to establish a stable home in Middlebury. Kelly, known to be a transient, received a Wendy house through donations. When others refused to help her assemble it, Jacquen offered to assist. That's where their connection began. Soon after, Jacquen moved in with her. By February 2024, the two were living together in the Wendy house when Joshlin vanished. From the early testimonies in the main trial, Jacquen was mostly silent, reserved. Witnesses described him as the background figure in Kelly's chaotic life. Social worker reports also referenced his name in passing, typically in the context of cohabitation with Kelly and exposure to the drug use that surrounded the home. One neighbor, Namhla Tinzi, recalled seeing him on the evening of the 19th of February 2024 when Kelly asked for help searching for Joshlin. At one point, Namhla suggested they check in Diasville, where Joshlin was known to frequent. Jacquen responded that it wasn't necessary. He claimed Joshlin wouldn't have gone that far. The comment in hindsight struck Namhla as bizarre. Who declines a possible lead in a search for a missing child? Other witnesses, including Shakira Khanif, a TikTok activist who worked closely with Kelly in the early stages of the search, also noticed Jacquen's subdued nature. He barely spoke. Kelly often answered questions for him. On one occasion, Shakira confronted him with questions about Joshlin's whereabouts, but Kelly quickly interjected and told him what to say. She even instructed him to cry at a public event where media were present, an instruction he complied with silently. Miss Natasha Andrews, who will later be referred to in the story as quote-unquote Grot Makma, who looked after Joshlin during holidays, also testified that she never met Jacquen prior to the disappearance and had only seen him when the story broke. She did, however, confirm that Joshlin was cared for frequently outside of Kelly's home, suggesting that others took a more active role in raising the child than her live-in boyfriend. From all the information presented across witness testimonies and available reports, there's been no direct reference to Jacquen Appollis having a prior criminal record. However, it must be emphasized that this does not conclusively mean that he has no such history. In South Africa, the accessibility of criminal records is heavily restricted, and unless directly referenced in court documents or testimonies, the existence or absence of prior offenses cannot be verified. The man now seated beside him in the dock, accused 2, Stevino van Rijn, was not just a co-accused, he was Jacquen's close friend. Their connection was explored through various testimonies. When police initially brought in suspects for questioning, Jacquen and Stevino were kept in a room together at the Sea Border Unit, an event that would later become central to the trial within a trial. This friendship has sparked key questions in court. Did the two of them conspire to create a narrative that pinned the crime on Kelly Smith? Or are they, as the defense now claims, victims of a coercive police system that forced false confessions out of 2 vulnerable men? Both men submitted plea statements in the main trial. Both later made video-recorded confessions on the 5th of March 2024, and now both claim they were tortured into making those statements. But Jacquen's case goes one step further. On day 28, he took the stand and became the first of the accused to testify under oath. He's no longer a man of few words. He's now telling his story in his own voice, for the court, for the public, and the nation to hear. This week, Jacquen Appollis stood in the witness box and tried to unpick a confession that bears his name, but in his own words contains, open quote, lies I was told to say, close quote. The courtroom watched as Jacquen, accused 1 in the disappearance of Joshlin Smith, attempt to reconcile 2 conflicting versions of the same day, the 19th of February 2024, each captured in a legal document. 1. His plea statement submitted on the 5th of March 2025, more than a year after Joshlin vanished. 2. His alleged confession, recorded on the 5th of March 2024 at the Sea Border Unit, where he claims he was tortured into speaking. Let's examine both side by side. Jacquen's plea explanation, delivered in court early in the trial, was his formal denial of guilt. According to the plea, on the day Joshlin disappeared, he was at home with her and Stevino. Kelly Smith came over during lunch and later returned to work. That afternoon, they all carried on with their day as usual. Later in the evening, Kelly returned and the child was gone. The focus of the statement was to emphasize that Jacquen had no idea what had happened to Joshlin and that he was simply present in the house where she lived. What also stood out was his claim that he'd been assaulted by police during one of the early interrogations following Joshlin's disappearance. According to his plea, he told Kelly Smith about the assault, but no formal complaint was ever made. He offered no explanation for why he remained silent, even after participating in media interviews, nor why he withheld this information until a year later. Then came the video confession, recorded on the 5th of March 2024, one day after Jacquen and Kelly were taken from a Langebaan resort to the Sea Border compound. In the video, Jacquen sits visibly injured, pointing to a swollen hand, bruised eye, and limping as he walks to the camera. He lifts his pants to reveal an injury to his left knee, and the videographer zooms in for documentation. But it's his words, not his wounds, that shook the courtroom. Here's what Jacquen allegedly confessed. Kelly Smith told him she was tired of fighting Joshlin's foster parents, referred to as, like we said earlier, quote-unquote, Grot Magma, and Joshlin's father, Josh. She told him she had spoken to Magalima, also known as Pumza Sikaka, and instructed Jacquen to take Joshlin to her in exchange for 20,000 rand. On the day of the disappearance, after Kelly went back to work, Jacquen and Stevino walked Joshlin to Magalima's house. They informed her that Kelly had sent them. She welcomed them, but said she and Kelly had already discussed the terms of the deal. They left Joshlin at Magalima's house, where she was seen playing with 4 other children. That night, they returned home, smoked drugs with Kelly, and went on with their lives. The confession ends with Jacquen admitting that he was involved in delivering Joshlin, though not in the negotiations or the decision to sell her, that he says was between Kelly and Magalima. But this entire account, Jacquen now claims, was constructed under pressure. When he took the stand on day 28, Jacquen, led by his lawyer, advocate Fanny Haramsa, began the process of deconstructing his own confession. The defense strategy was clear: separate what Jacquen admits is true from what he says he was forced to say. Here's what he stands by. He confirms that Kelly made the comments about being tired of Joshlin's foster family. He agrees that on the 19th of February 2024, he was with Stevino and that Laurentia came over to smoke. He agrees that they smoked drugs, sold a microwave, and went about their routine. But then he drew the line. He denied any knowledge or involvement in the sale of Joshlin. He claimed the part about Kelly arranging the deal with Makalima and instructing him to take Joshlin was fabricated, not his words. Who fed him these words? He doesn't say. Why didn't he report the coercion sooner? He claims he was afraid. Jacquen alleges that between the 4th and the 5th of March 2024, he was beaten with 2 batons all over his body, wrapped in a flag and assaulted for a prolonged period. Forced to illustrate the baton blows in court, he mimicked using the baton as a hammer on a chair. Placed in the quote-unquote helicopter torture position, hands cuffed over your knees, hoisted on a metal rod, leaving him hanging in pain. But there's a major issue. None of these injuries appear on his J88 medical forms. Pressed by the state, Jacquen insists this is because he was afraid to speak up, even to his lawyer, even after being transferred to Leiplek Correctional Center, and even after giving multiple media interviews. The courtroom turned tense when the state cross-examined Jacquen. They pressed him on why he changed the timeline of when he arrived at Seaborder from lunchtime to 4 to 5 p.m., clearly adopting this after hearing Sergeant David Fordain's testimony. Why he claimed he was present at Makalina's house during the pointing out later that evening on the 4th of March 2024, yet never gave that instruction to his lawyer until it became convenient. Why he told different stories to Captain Lombard and Sergeant Fordain about who allegedly assaulted him. Why details about who interrogated or assaulted him changed depending on who was on the witness stand. Each inconsistency added weight to the state's growing argument. Jacquen's version of events shifted too easily to be trusted. In the words of Judge Nathan Erasmus, if police officers like Captain Lombard and Sergeant Fordain never interviewed him on the 4th and 5th of March 2024, like he says, with their years of experience, fully aware of the fact that the statements taken on those days would be challenged in a trial within a trial, why would they willingly testify in court claiming they interviewed him, opening themselves up to cross-examination? Open quote. Why would they come here, place themselves in the room, and take the punch? Close quote. Jacquen had no answer. As Jacquen Appollis took the stand in the courtroom, collectively leaned forward to listen to the man accused of helping orchestrate the disappearance of a 6-year-old child, the broader legal machinery around him kept turning. Week 6 of the Joshlin Smith trial was more than just the testimony of one accused. It was a crescendo in the state's effort to defend the integrity of its investigation and the defense's push to unravel the alleged confession at the heart of the trial within a trial. The drama playing out through Jacquen's words could not obscure the foundational testimony laid earlier in the week. Testimony that tested not only the credibility of law enforcement, but also the resilience of the judicial process itself. Let's step back and trace the events outside Jacquen's witness box that shaped the final days of the state's case and opened the doors to the defenses. The state's final days in the trial within the trial were devoted to reinforcing the idea that what occurred at the Seaborder Unit compound between the 4th and the 5th of March 2024 was lawful, controlled, and transparent. But that claim, tested under the defense's cross-examination, was anything but easy to uphold. Colonel Pretorius, who took down Jacquen's alleged confession, was first to take the stand. Calm and methodical, he spoke to the technical process. He explained how Jacquen was read his rights, how he appeared alert, how he signed documentation, and how the interview ran without objection. He dismissed any suggestion of coercion or distress and pointed to the footage as evidence of voluntary participation. But the defense was ready. They questioned him about a moment in the video when Jacquen appears to shake his head before the camera cuts. Was that a refusal, a hesitation? Pretorius stood firm. Open quote. It was a nod, close quote, he said, not a shake. The judge reviewed the footage himself and confirmed the colonel's interpretation. Still, the seed of doubt was planted, because what matters in this courtroom is not just what the cameras saw, but what it may have missed. Warrant Officer Smealan was brought in to verify the J88 medical process. He had taken Jacquen for his examination on the 5th of March 2024. Yes, there were injuries. Yes, they were documented. No, he did not see any signs of torture, but his testimony, though brief, was critical. He was one of the few people who'd seen Jacquen in that narrow window between interrogation and confession. Yet he was not present for any of the questioning, and the defense quickly highlighted that, leaving Smealan less a participant in the process. and more of a bystander with limited scope. Then came Sergeant David Fortuin, a name that has echoed throughout the trial within a trial as one of the central officers present at sea border on the day the accused were questioned. If there was any truth to the claims of coercion, Fortuin would either confirm it or categorically deny it. He did the latter. Fortuin detailed how on the 4th of March 2024, he and others brought in the 3 accused for questioning, not arrest. They were placed in different rooms, but at one point, Jacquen and Stevino were left together in a boardroom, not strictly monitored, but uncuffed and not yet formally detained. That window of freedom, Fortuin explained, ended when Stevino approached him and said he had something to share. The name, quote-unquote, Makalima, the woman who allegedly took Joshlin from Kelly in exchange for 20,000 rand. Fortuin said that when he took this information to Jacquen and he heard the name, his expression changed. Something had shifted. Soon after, both men agreed to give recorded statements, but the defense pounced on this narrative. If these statements were volunteered, why would Fortuin not document the timeline in precise detail? Why were logs missing entries? Why was no formal complaint filed when Jacquen was allegedly beaten? Fortuin stood by his account, but the defense used his testimony to build their claim. Something happened in that room between Jacquen and Stevino, and it was not justice. One of the week's most contentious testimonies came from Captain Philip Seikoe, the officer who took Stevino's alleged confession. He was not just cross-examined, he was grilled primarily by advocate Nobahle Mkabayi, who picked apart his timeline, his decisions, and his conduct. At the heart of the conflict was this. Early on the 5th of March 2024, Colonel Ian Clark had examined Stevino and determined he was not in a state to proceed with a confession. He appeared drowsy, sluggish, possibly drugged or injured. Yet a short time later, Seikoe proceeded with a full interview. Why? Seikoe insisted Stevino was now fit. He claimed he saw no signs of distress, but when the video of the confession was played in court, the visuals told a different story. Stevino appeared dazed, occasionally unfocused, with visible bruises on his arm and face. Advocate Mkabayi used this to drive home her point. If a trained officer couldn't see what the camera clearly captured, how could his account be trusted? Even Judge Erasmus appeared unconvinced. His questions to Seikoe were pointed, even skeptical. The judge hinted that the admissibility of this statement would require stronger procedural adherence than what he had seen. Although not a witness in the trial within the trial, Kelly Smith's presence loomed large. On day 27, she appeared at court with a visible forehead injury reportedly sustained during police transport. She posed briefly for photographers, then later broke down in tears in court. Then she was escorted out, only to return later in the day. Kelly's behavior, ever unpredictable, now sits in stark contrast to her co-accused. She's not claimed mistreatment, she's not testified. She watches day after day as others tell the story around her, yet she remains for now silent. When the trial resumes on Tuesday, the 15th of April 2025, the courtroom will reassemble with unfinished business. Jacquen Appollis, still under oath, will return to face further questioning. The state is expected to close its cross-examination, but not without pressing him further on inconsistencies and omissions in his timeline. It's not yet clear whether accused 2 Stevino van Rijn will take the stand. If he does, it could either reinforce or undermine the defense's narrative of coercion. Once testimony concludes, the court will hear closing arguments in the trial within a trial. A ruling on the admissibility of the statements could follow shortly after, possibly before week 8 begins. With the trial within a trial nearly concluded, the full scope of the case will reopen. Witnesses yet to be called include Captain Muller, who will explain visual evidence, Pumza Sikaka, named in both confessions, now scheduled to testify as State Witness 55. Week 6 was a brutal, complicated, and essential turning point. The courtroom is no longer searching for Joshlin. It's now searching for the truth behind the stories, behind the confessions, behind the silences. And as Judge Erasmus continues to dissect every line, every pause, and every contradiction, the country watches, waiting for a child to reappear or for someone to finally admit what happened to her. Week 7 will not offer easy answers, but it may give us clarity. And in a trial like this, That may be the most we can hope for. This brings us to the end of our breakdown. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Also, I would love to hear from you. How do you see the trial within the trial ending? Do you think the state has done enough to prove the admissibility of both statements? Or do you believe the defense has cast enough reasonable doubt to leave Judge Erasmus with no other choice but to deem the alleged confessions inadmissible in the main trial? Drop those comments below and I will send personal shoutouts in the next trial breakdown. Lastly, visit our news website swisherpost.co.za for the best explainers on every important event happening around you. No agenda, just the story.